Welcome back to the Kevin Henry Podcast. Before we get started, please like and subscribe. Help us get to 1,000 followers. We're super close and we cannot do this show without you. Also, stay tuned on Friday morning. We'll be dropping a major update in the Michaela Jeffries murder case right here on Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble. You've probably heard people say the American justice system is rigged. It's a two-tier system where the wealthy and the well-connected walk, and the rest of us always have to pay a price. Well, tonight, we're not speculating. We've got first-hand proof. Edmund Baker Jr. sat on a Brazoria County Grand Jury, and what he saw from the inside will make your blood boil. He dared to ask to see all the evidence before we ruin someone's life, and the DA's office treated him like he was the problem. Edmund is here to name names. He says the former DA Jeri Yenne, Assistant DA Mary Aldous, and current DA Tom Selleck use the grand juries not as an independent check, but as a tool to manipulate justice. A rubber stamp, if you will. Justice is supposed to be blind. What is it in Brazoria County? It's just dirty politics in another department of just us. So buckle up, because the cover-up ends right here. No one is above the law. The people have had enough. We will root out the criminals and expose them all. We're fighting to expose the criminal element in Texas. Our investigation in the Brazoria County's justice system has just begun.
And now, your host, Kevin Henry.
Welcome to the show, Edmund Baker Jr. Thank you so much for coming on. I know you have a lot to tell us, so let's get right into it. You were on the grand jury in Brazoria County. What year was that?
The last 3 months of 2009, the first 3 months of 2010.
Can you give us a little bit tell us about your background and how you were selected to become a grand jury member in Brazoria County?
You have to be nominated to be on the grand jury. Before I was nominated, I had a little history, with the county already as far as doing other things, as far as public, service and stuff in the community. And so I believe that's how I got nominated.
Can you tell us about that? What exactly you were doing for the county leading up to your grand jury selection?
In 2001, I was a part of the Brazoria County Citizens Sheriff's Academy, and at that time, they would select people to ride around with the sheriff deputies whenever they were on the clock, and just kind of seeing what they did, while they were on duty, and also the ins and outs of the administration department. And so we would be at the sheriff's office and stuff.
So you knew quite a few people within the government of Brazoria County.
Yeah, and so I did. I was a part of that. The sheriff, of course, at the time, Sheriff Wagner, and so it was like they gave us tours and stuff, the facilities, and just it was a whole, I think it was a 6-week program. I forgot how long, but it was a pretty good program, pretty good length of time, and so I got to know a lot of people, the constables and commissioners and stuff like that back then. But then in 2002. I was a CASA volunteer. They call it the court-appointed special advocate it's for CPS cases, and so they pick people who volunteer to be a part of that program, and they swear you in and stuff at the district courthouse. And Judge Hofsteller at the time, he swore me in, and that was in 2002. Sort of like guardian ad litems, where we would speak on behalf of the kids in CPS cases and stuff. We would go visit the families and find out information so we could speak on behalf of the kids. And then in 2009, 2010, that's when I was a part of the grand jury.
And can you give us a rough idea of what the selection, you got selected to be a grand jury member. Did they give you any orientation or any training leading up to your first case?
Well, as far as the process I just know it was a big pool of nominated people by the who's who in Brazoria County. I guess after they picked the actual grand jury candidates, then they gave us a little pamphlet. It was like a welcome pamphlet and thanking us, for being a part of it. But it wasn't really any training or anything like that.
So there was no training. You were selected. You were probably kind of handpicked, would you say, to become a grand jury member?
Yes. Because at that time when I was a part of it, Jeri Yenne, she was the DA at the time, and so we were just told that, congratulations, y'all been nominated, but they didn't say who nominated us. Once we got the welcoming package and we got selected to be on the grand jury, they just took us into the DA's office and kind of gave us a rundown of what to expect during our 6-month term.
So grand jury is a 6-month appointment.
Yes.
And it's how many members?
I think it's 11 and 1 alternate, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. And did you understand as a grand jury member, your role as an independent agent? You weren't an agent of the district attorney's office. You were independently tasked to look at all evidence and any evidence that you wanted to look at?
They said that they had the grand jury as a independent body,
right.
Independent from the DA. And so our understanding was we were supposed to be given the evidence of each case, and once we were given the evidence, the DA or the DA's representative, and then we were to deliberate and come up with a conclusion based on the evidence of the case.
The facts and the evidence that if you wanted more evidence, you should have been able to request more evidence, correct?
Correct.
At what point did you start noticing the steering of the grand jury members? When did you start noticing that from the ADA and the DA? They
were instructing us of what equates a first-degree felony, what equates a second-degree felony, what equates a third-degree felony, and stuff like that, so we can kind of get familiar with the terms and stuff.
And what the elements of the crime are.
Exactly.
Got you.
They actually gave us our first case. Jeri Yenne was the DA, but she didn't come in very often. It was primarily Mary Aldous. She's still there, it was primarily Mary Aldous.
So Mary Aldous was the assistant district attorney?
Yes.
Under Jeri Yenne?
She's the lead. Yeah, the lead.
And she's still in that position under Tom Selleck today, currently.
Yeah. Whenever we got our first case, this was my first experience, they recommended. They say, okay, this is such and such. This is an assault. This is a DWI, whatever, the case may be. And so this is the evidence that we have. And so it'll be like just basically telling us, not us looking at it yet. They'll basically just be telling us what the information says and what it is. And then they'll say, well, y'all have to decide, but we recommend no bill or a true bill, to indict or not to indict.
So they were given recommendations at the very beginning of you guys even looking at the case.
Yeah. They would recommend one way or the other before they would leave out. And so it's like they already put the picture in our mind which way we should go before we even saw the case ourselves. But a lot of times when we did actually get the case, it was like redacted. It was like we saw the case.
You saw part of the information.
But it was like whatever that they wanted to withhold, it was like redacted. And so it would be upon us to request, more evidence or more, another witness. Or
did you ever run into problems by requesting more information than they gave you at the beginning of the case?
Unfortunately, yes. That ended up being a major issue because I was under the impression that we were really supposed to make the decision based on all of the information and the evidence, and it turned out not to be that way much at all. Whenever we would ask for more information, it was like pulling teeth, and mostly I was the one asking for the extra information. And whenever I would ask for A lot of it was one-sided. That's the main thing. It was like you would hear from the complainant, but you wouldn't hear from the defendant. It would always be the complainant's story. And so it was like, if that's all we're going to go off of, I'm not saying this person isn't credible, but it's supposed to be two sides,
But you're supposed to be an independent body, and you wanted all the information, not just the information the DA was wanting to present.
Exactly.
You wanted to see both sides of the case, as should anybody in that grand jury pool.
Exactly. And so we wanted to know that we were making a quality decision, whichever way, whether it was to indict the person or not.
Because that affects everybody's life. I mean, you could put somebody in prison for a long time that don't deserve to be there, or you can let somebody walk that deserves to be in prison.
Exactly. And that was the take I had on it. It was like, if I chose to indict somebody, I want to see the evidence to indict them. But at the same token, if the evidence is not there, then I wouldn't feel comfortable. Or if it's missing information, I wouldn't feel comfortable, indicting somebody. And that was kind of like the tug of war from the beginning, getting sufficient evidence to actually make a quality, vote, because we had to vote. Each one of us had to vote.
And tell us about the voting process. And so they needed 9 members to side with them, It didn't have to be unanimous, right?
Because it didn't have to be unanimous. All they needed was like 9 out of the 12. The DA's office, they were people, I say the DA's office, but, it was several one. Mary Aldous was the primary one, but it was several other DA assistants, that would come in with different cases. And whenever they would present a case to us, it was like, they would spoon feed us. I mean, that's pretty much what they did. It's like they would tell us what they wanted us to know about the case, and then here you go, and we're going to step out. But they've already kind of conditioned everybody, because majority of people, they're going to take the advice of the DA. It's the DA,
So the grand jury selection process is basically they're cherry picking grand jury members. They're cherry picking evidence that they present to the grand jury members. They tell you what they want before they walk out of the room. Did they ever sit in there with the grand jury while they were deliberating?
Yes. From time to time, whenever it was a case that they really wanted to make sure it went their way, sometimes they didn't leave out at all.
They would stay in the room with the grand jury members the whole time.
Yeah, they would stay in the whole time and make sure that nothing went off.
And would you say prevalently more so it was Mary Aldous than the others?
More so it was Mary Aldous than the others, simply because she was like the lead, and also she presented more of the cases. But it was all of them, it was like that was I guess that was the way they did it.
Would Mary Aldous preside over presenting cases for like the high profile cases that you were privy to?
Yeah, and Jeri Yenne, she was only in there a couple of times, and they were like, I think like murder cases. They were like, real big high profile cases, but most of the time it was Mary Aldous, and some of the other ones, to my knowledge, a couple of them are still there as well, but I don't know who's still there. But whenever we would request for more information, that's just when we would run into the opposition. And because I'm thinking, wouldn't you want us to have,
all of the information?
Yeah, sufficient evidence and information. So so what I started doing, I started taking it upon myself, to whenever we would deliberate, I would interject. I would be like, says that this person did this or that, but shouldn't we request that they come in and give testimony or come in and give a statement, And
you were discussing this with the other grand jury members?
With the other grand jury members. And because we could, we can deliberate amongst each other.
Would you get the other grand jury members to side with you and see your side of that idea?
That's when I believe that's when I became a nuisance, because the first little while, I was kind of hesitant. I didn't know what to ask or what to say or what to do. But as the time progressed, each week, after the first few weeks, I started getting more comfortable like speaking up.
You were starting to understand your role.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so since we're all in there together, we're supposed to be, you know, independent body. I'm like, okay, well, I know this is what the DA said, but shouldn't we, you know, request this or request that? When they would come back in sometime, we would have, you know, that request, like, can we have more information, or can we bring this person in to give testimony? And that, you know, that's time consuming. You know, they just want to get to the next case. You know, let's hurry and do whatever we're going to do with this one.
They already had their mind made up the way they want this case to go. They presented you with all the evidence that leads to that conclusion. And here you are trying to defend the people, or at least look at both sides of the case to understand both sides. And you were starting to become the nuisance.
Yeah.
What would they say to you when you requested more information?
Well, at first it was the looks, but then, you know, it was the size, and then, just the frustration. You know, you can see it on their faces, you know, because they knew when they came in.
They knew legally they couldn't tell you no.
Yeah, and so it got to the point where it was like, you know, Edmund again, you know, is because they knew it was me. They knew I was the one, you know, that was kind of making the other, well, not making, but, you know, getting the other jurors to understand that this is serious. You know, we need to make sure we're making the right decision.
These people aren't just a number. It's somebody's life that you're ruling on. You're coming up with a decision on.
Yeah, and that's a good point there, because they would present a GJ number. It's like a grand jury number. They would present the people as numbers. You know, it's not this name or this person. You know, of course, you know, because we had all that information anyway. It's not like they were giving us confidential information we couldn't see. You know, we saw the names and the age and everything, their addresses. And, you know, so it's not like they were telling us something we didn't need to know. You know, we already knew those things. And so it's like whenever we were asking, you know, for more information, it was almost like resentment, you know, because it was like whenever they would come in and we hadn't come to a conclusion, it would be, you can see a sign of frustration. Like, oh, here we go again.
We're already supposed to be on the next case by now, and here you are, Edmund. Yeah. You're not supposed to be. You're not following the rules, Edmund. The unspoken rules.
Yeah, and that's really what happened. And so it got to the point where I started seeing such a one-sided situation where the assault, family violence, and child abuse accusations, stuff like that. That's serious, you know. So you want to know, man, if this person really abused this child, I want to see everything. If this person really assaulted this person, I want to see everything, you know, because if they did, you know, hey, let's do what we got to do to indict them. But if they didn't, that's a huge thing to indict somebody for child molestation or assault or abuse if they really didn't. So I wanted to know if they did or if they didn't. And a lot of times when we got the information from the DA, it wasn't sufficient evidence.
So were there ever any jurors initially disagree with what you were trying to get more information? Were they rebutting you in the grand jury room and telling you, "Oh, Edmund, let's just go. They already have it the way they want it. They've already given us this evidence. We don't need to see the rest of that." Did you ever have opposition in the grand jury room?
In the beginning, it was like that because the mentality and the mindset, you know, is that's the district attorney, you know, that's the DA's office. So they know more than us. You know, we're not lawyers. We're not the DA. We're, you know, they do all the investigation. They, you know, so it's basically like they already know. So why would we, you know, go against them? So basically what they were trying to do was succeeding. Yeah. And it succeeds a lot. But it just during that stint when I was there, they had to work.
Yeah, you were asking for more information. You wanted to see the whole presentation, not the cherry pick side.
Yeah.
Were there ever any cases that specifically stand out in your mind that you felt like were unjust verdicts?
It was several cases where all of the evidence proved that they were guilty, but the DA wanted us to no bill them. And then it was a few situations where we just didn't see the evidence of what they were being accused of, but the DA wanted us to true bill them, and to indict them. Yeah, and so the no bill and the true bills, it was like the DA wanted us to do whatever they wanted us to do. It wasn't our decision. They always say that. Even when you read in the paper today, they'll say the grand jury indicted such and such. That's just hogwash.
Yeah. You know what they say, you can indict a ham sandwich. So.
And it's the truth.
And I'm starting to understand how this works now, because I've sat in as witness on a grand jury, got pulled into to the room and gave my statement about something, and I witnessed the district attorney stand over my shoulder and coach the grand jury into them not believing me and what I was witnessing at the time, which to me was a huge slap in the face. I was in there on my own premise. I'm the one that blew the whistle on something. I exposed something that would have been massive in Brazoria County, and I watched the grand jury side with the district attorney because he was standing in the room that day. And I heard that he doesn't stand in that room very often. So it has to be extremely important for him to stand in there and coach that grand jury the way he did. Because I'll tell you right now, unequivocally, he coached the grand jury and steered them into the decision of the no indictment or no charges. So I'm starting to see what you're talking about, and you're blowing the whistle from the inside and I'm blowing the whistle from the outside. There has to be reform in the grand jury process. But before we get into that, and before we get into some more cases that you want to talk about that are pretty important, we should talk about, we should not leave them out. We need to get a word from our sponsors. We'll be right back.
And now, a word from our sponsors.
Need a barn built to last? At Stuckey Barns in Brazoria County, Texas, we blend quality craftsmanship with rugged durability and Texas pride to make your dream barn real. From custom barns to metal buildings, we build strong, local, and backed by a hometown service. Need bold, high-quality ink? Seven Souls Tattoo Studio has you covered. We're obsessively clean and professional, guiding you from idea to unforgettable art. Got old ink? We'll transform it into stunning new work with precision and creativity. Drop by Seven Souls at 20 Circle Way in Lake Jackson, Texas. Boat season's here. Is your ride ready? At Liquid Rides in Brazoria, we handle certified marine repairs and full engine builds. We're your Mercury Marine and PCM dealer, keeping you smooth all year. Plus custom stereo installs for boats, vehicles, side-by-sides, and Jeeps. Liquid Rides, custom audio, certified performance, built in Texas. Looking for real coverage from real people? Whether it's your home, car, or business, go see Landra Olson's team at Farmers Insurance in West Columbia, Texas, where hometown service meets top-rated protection. Spring's here, and it's time to get those flower beds and gardens in shape. Rifles Feed and Supply in Brazoria has soil, mulch, and everything you need to make your yard pop, plus the best feed and supplies for your animals. Fentanyl is taking our loved ones' lives every day, but knowledge can save them. Travis's Voice is dedicated to raising awareness, educating communities, and preventing future tragedies. To learn more, go to travis'svoice.org.
And now, back to the Kevin Henry Podcast.
And welcome back. We're here with Edmund Baker Jr., and we're discussing the Brazoria County Grand Jury process and how Edmund sat in on the grand jury and is pulling the curtain back on exactly what he noticed while he was in there. Edmund, can you tell us about, you were describing to me a race between two police officers in, what was that, in Clute?
It was in Clute.
So there was two police officers that were racing. They were both not going to a crime scene. They weren't going to a call. They were physically racing each other on the highway. At what speeds were they going? And can you tell us about how that got presented to grand jury?
I just wanted to mention too that all of this stuff is public information, so this is what I'm saying, you can look it up yourself. But it was 2 police officers racing during the time when I was on the grand jury. Like Kevin said, they weren't going to a call or nothing. They were just horse playing and they were racing each other and they crashed. And one was going 105 in a 50. I think it was on 288B because that's where the 50 miles per hour zone is. And then the other officer was going 78 in a 50. And like I said, if that was one of us, they'll take us to jail. But they were racing each other going 105 and 78.
Were they going 105 and 78 at the point of impact?
Based on the investigation, if I recall, I believe that's how the investigators came to the conclusion of how fast they were going. Because I know when they were racing, I know they reached a limit, a speed of 105 and 78. I know that much. And so
did they crash into each other?
They crashed. All I remember is they crashed. And that was the way, everything got discovered because they actually had a wreck. And so when that case came before us, it was already all in the facts newspaper and everything. People knew about it. But when it came to us, we're supposed to be the impartial body and we're supposed to judge the situation based on the evidence or lack thereof. When they brought us each case, they brought us the cases individually.
Okay.
And so the first officer, the one that was going 105, they wanted him to walk. They wanted us to no-bill him. And he was obviously guilty, going 105 in a police unit, and he wasn't doing nothing but horse playing. But then the one that was going 78, they wanted us to indict him. They wanted us to true bill him.
Hold on. So they wanted an indictment and a no bill. They didn't want the same punishment for both of them for doing the same crime.
They didn't want the same punishment for the same crime. And they were officers on duty. But they wanted one to get off, and they wanted the other one to be indicted.
Did you ask for more information in that case? Was that one of the cases that you wanted more information regarding that?
Well, in that case, we all were just wondering why the contrast, like why one of them you want us to indict and the other one you don't. That was our question. It wasn't so much as the evidence because they were both obvious. It was obvious. They had the wreck and they were flying and they were on duty and there was no emergency. So both of them were guilty. So why do you want this one to get off while you want us to indict the other one? That was our question.
Was this another case that Mary Aldous was presenting?
If I'm not mistaken, I believe that was another case where Mary was involved in. I don't remember all of the cases, but she was involved in majority of them. Even if one of the other assistants presented it, she still would be involved. She still would come in and out the room and stuff. But we got to know them all. We were there for 6 months, and so it was like a relationship where I started feeling comfortable enough to kind of just speak my piece,
Yeah.
At first, I was kind of hesitant and kind of cautious.
Did you ask about that particular instance? Did you say, why are you guys wanting indictment on one and no bill on the other?
Yeah, and they ended up, they called it like a direct file. Like whenever we would take notes, we see like direct file. That means is directly in the hands of the DA. That was what I gathered. That was the conclusion I came up with.
So they knew that y'all wanted to indict both of them.
Yeah.
So do you think that one officer was connected somehow?
The 6 months that I was on the grand jury, that was the only conclusion I could come up with because I saw other cases where if it was somebody in the know or somebody, a family member or a relative or a friend or a big business owner that everybody knew, or just the opposite. If it was a little, peon or nobody, that nobody would miss, they try to lock them up and throw away the key even if you didn't have any evidence. So it was like I saw both ends of the spectrum.
So you saw the biases of one side to the other. So
Yeah.
you saw them coming in presenting indictment, we got to get this guy indictment or this woman indicted. And then you saw we need to no bill this person.
Yeah.
And you clearly saw the favoritism in government officials, family, friends, business owners?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was obvious. I mean, they would tell us. I'm sure other, grand jury members, people who've been a part of the grand jury can attest to it, because that's what they would do. I mean, they would literally spoon feed us. They would tell us how they wanted it to go if it was a case that they deemed too important to let it go, either way. Like, it was like whenever they wanted it to go this way or that way, they would kind of like babysit us throughout the whole decision.
So without a doubt, unequivocally, they steered the grand jury into the decisions that they wanted.
Oh,
going as far as sitting in the rooms with you and listening to your deliberations.
100%. 100%. And I don't see myself as a whistleblower, because everybody talks about it now, because it's been going on for so many decades, but now me being on the inside, I'm basically confirming, all of that, because when I hear everybody talk about their different situations and cases and I'm like, I was on the grand jury. I know how it goes. Yeah, that's what so that's when I started sharing, my experience on it, because I know it's inconsistent. I mean, it's based on the person. It's based on how they feel that day. It's based on like the case. If it's a lengthy case where it can take up a lot of time, that they'll try to just kind of hurry us on instead of us asking, But like I said, I started getting to the point now where I'm like, I put myself in every last one of these GJ number shoes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute. I got to the point where I would sit there, and I don't care if everybody else was ready to make a decision. If I didn't feel comfortable yet, I would sit there myself and go over documents. And if I felt like we needed more information, I would ask for it. And another thing I started doing was getting them to bring physical bodies. They didn't want to do that at first. They didn't want to bring the physical bodies to give their statements, or because then we can see,
you can relate with them,
body language
them,
and how they you can tell, you can pretty much tell if somebody's sincere or not. So at least let's get them in here and give their side of the story. Whether it's the defendant or whether it's the complainant. Like, let's get them to come in. And so that's what I started doing, because I knew in my shoes, if that was me, I would want to be able to tell my side,
Especially when you have the prosecutor sitting in the room with the grand jury members steering the committee.
Yeah.
You don't have a say in any part of that. I don't understand how anybody feels that that's the letter of, going by the letter of the law and what the grand jury was there for.
Yeah.
It's not there to be steered by the district attorney's office and the ADA.
Yeah.
It's there for an impartial balance in the judicial system.
And that's what everybody assumes, but it's far from that, because the only people could come in there would be other police officers, like that was a part of the investigation, but you can always tell when it was the officer that they chose to come in to give, because it was always collaborating with what they wanted.
And here's another thing that I don't think a lot of people in Brazoria County understand. But when you go in to testify in front of a grand jury, you don't get to walk in with counsel. You cannot bring an attorney that helps represent you in that case. You have to walk in there, swear an oath, and not have any counsel, even though you're looking at whatever years in jail, prison, whatever it is. Yep. You don't have any legal representation in that room with you. So basically, it seems like the whole system is designed to bulldoze over people and then allow people to walk free that they want to walk free.
Yep.
And what were you saying? It was usually business owners that walked free.
Because it was people that worked for the county. They had cases. It was people that worked for the cities, different cities in the county. It was people that we knew had connections. They were part of the who's who, the good old boy, whatever. You can tell when it was somebody, because it was even a case where it was a DWI case, and it was a college student, and he was 100% like guilty. All of the evidence was there. We saw it. Everybody was in agreement with the true bill, with indicting. But the DA's office came to us and basically tried to confuse us and change our minds, from what we saw.
Was this person connected? Did you find out if the person was connected?
That's what I'm saying. That person, the college student that did the DWI, they were telling us about it's gonna mess up his future. It's gonna this. It's gonna that. But we saw 10, 12 cases, DWI where they didn't care about ruining their future or destroying their reputation or credibility or their family. But this particular one here, all of a sudden now we're supposed to feel sorry. We're supposed to have remorse. We're supposed to, people make bad decisions and we should give him a second chance. And then we come to find out it was somebody, that was that was connected. Yeah.
Of course he was.
Yeah. And so that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying names. I'm not saying nothing, but I'm saying that case, I know that case for sure. I didn't mind either way. It's not like I wanted everybody to walk free. I didn't want to no-bill everybody and nobody go to jail. It's just I wanted to make sure that if I indicted them, it was all evidence there. But the DA didn't care. That's what I'm trying to say. It wasn't like they were just really trying to make sure justice was served, because whenever somebody was guilty as all get out and they didn't want them to be, indicted, they'll try to talk us out of it. So I know it wasn't about just the crime and the law and it was about
who you are.
Yeah, exactly. It was about who you are.
How much money, power, and influence you have.
Yeah.
Whether your daddy or your granddaddy was a judge, or you're probably going to get out of it.
Yep. It was situations where somebody it was this guy, he literally assaulted a lady. And that's what I'm saying. If I see the evidence is there, yeah, I'm going to choose to indict him. But if the evidence is not there, I need more information and evidence.
As should every grand jury member.
Yeah. And it got to the point where they started saying, let's do this for Edmund. I say, you're not doing it for me. I say, this person right here, I say, this is a human being. This is not a GJ number. That's what I'm saying. They used to try to present them as numbers. I say, this is a person. And I say, and we would read on there and you can tell if they were already in jail or not, and that's the thing. A lot of them were already in jail.
When your freedom and your reputation's on the line, you want 12 Edmund Baker Jr.'s in the grand jury. Not the handpicked, cherry-selected grand jury members that listen to the DA's office and select, and they're happy to go off of the cherry-picked evidence.
Yep.
You want people like yourself, and that's awesome that you stood up for these people, even though it seems like you were outnumbered.
Yeah, but I started winning them over, and that's when, like I said, that's when I started getting ostracized, because they saw I was actually having positive influence. It wasn't like I was being negative. I was just getting them to see things the way it should have been. Based on the letter they gave us when we first became grand jurors, the letters said all of that about they're going to give us sufficient evidence, they're going to this, they're going to, it was like everything on paper lined out. But when we actually got there and was doing it, then it wasn't anything like the paper said.
Well, hopefully there's a lot of people watching this show now that will become grand jury members one day, and they take a page out of your book and they look at all the evidence, no matter what the district attorney's office is telling them, that no matter which way they're trying to steer you, that you do the right thing for that GJ number. They're not just a number, they're a person.
Yeah.
And they deserve a chance, just like you deserve a chance if you're on the other side of that fence. So kudos on that, Edmund. What's your thoughts on cleaning this up? How could we get the grand jury cleaned up and this whole process just by educating the new grand jury members that are going in, right?
Exactly. That's what I believe, educating the masses. So if and when they get selected, even if it's just a regular jury panel, for a case, in regular court, if you understand that this is a person and you need to put yourself in that person's shoes, and you would want somebody, you should be the type of person that you would want. If that was you, your freedom was on the line or your credibility was on the line,
Right. Edmund, so you feel like the grand jury is the whole process is a rubber stamp for the DA's office. Would you say so?
Yes. It's just it gives off the image.
It's a formality.
Yeah, it's a formality.
They're in there to do the bidding of the district attorney.
That's pretty much.
And I know the court systems are bogged down. There's a lot more cases than there is time, it seems like. But when your life's on the line, when your reputation, your livelihood, your career, there should be more people like you on this grand jury that are actually looking at all the facts and all the evidence and not buying into this BS that the DA's office wants you to do. So hopefully your story wakes some people up in the community and they understand that becoming a grand jury member is not just a formality. You have a duty to uphold the rule of law for people that are in the position of looking at years in prison. In fact, it's admirable of what you did in the face of all the opposition. Edmund, you were on the grand jury and you were also doing paid gigs because you play saxophone, right? So you were doing paid gigs for the county. What was it, Christmas party?
I was doing a lot of stuff for the county and for different elected officials within the county and different cities and stuff. But I would play for Christmas parties. I would play at their churches. I would play when they have their like fundraisers and stuff for when they're running for office. I played for everything.
And this is while you were on the grand jury?
A couple times I was actually still on the grand jury during the Christmas season. I played. But like I say, they had been using me for years. But on the grand jury, when I was a part of the grand jury process, I don't know what's in people's minds, but for me to get selected, I was already like their music man.
Yeah. Yeah. So they probably thought, well, this guy's going to go along with whatever we want.
Yeah.
He's getting paid by a lot of us.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's your side business. I mean, that's your main business, isn't it? Just playing saxophone.
That's what I do. That's my career.
So you're playing saxophone for people, getting paid by the county while you're sitting on the grand jury.
Yeah. And at the time, I knew I was still doing everything consistent, with my role on the grand jury. Now that I look back, that was a conflict of interest.
That could have been a deciding factor of why they wanted you on the grand jury.
Yeah.
Because they can kind of control some money that's going your way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because it all stopped.
All of that stopped?
It all stopped immediately.
So tell me about the time that you went and played a gig up in Harris County for some judges up there. You told me that they had told you something about the grand jury in Brazoria County?
Oh, yeah. I was playing for and like I said, this is just something I do. It wasn't anything unusual. I play for a lot of county, city, federal, state officials. I play for a lot of political events, and so I was happening to play for one in Houston. And like I say, it doesn't matter if it's the Democrat, Republican, Independent. If they're paying and they want me to come play, I'll go play, And so I was at an event in Harris County and it had judges and a lot of other influential leaders there running for office. And I just mentioned it that I was on the grand jury. I said, yeah, I'm on the grand jury of Brazoria County. And I didn't talk about nothing, or no cases or nothing. Several of the judges, they said that the Brazoria County DA's office was known for enhancing unrelated crimes and for not performing thorough investigations.
So this is known by the judges in Harris County.
Yeah. And I can attest to it because that's exactly what happened.
Enhancing unrelated crimes.
That refreshed my memory because on one of the cases, it was more than one, but this one particular one, it really stuck with me because it was this juvenile. They were like 17 and it was just little petty crimes, like little theft or something. But when they were 11 years old, they went to juvie because they were chasing their older brother around with a crowbar or something. That's brothers. They was fighting and he didn't hit him, really just chasing around. But somebody had called the cops on him and he got in trouble. And that's literally what the DA did. They went all the way back to when he was 11 and enhanced this charge.
Unrelated crime.
The 17, when he was 17. They say, oh, well, look at what he did when he was 11. He chased his brother around with a crowbar, and they enhanced the petty theft. They enhanced it to make it a more, like a higher, greater charge because of what he did when he was 11.
So he must not have been connected to the good old boys.
Exactly. Exactly.
Edmund, thank you for coming on, and we'll be back next week. where we discuss your run for City of Clute judge against Randy Smith and how they came after you and tried to destroy you.
Yeah.